All right, we'll get started. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening. We are here to discuss the BCYF Dorchester Community Center project. This is our second community meeting. Previous one was in November 8th, and so we're here to follow up and catch up everyone on what's been going on. Petra, would you go to the next slide, please? For those who are in need of translation services, 4 languages are being provided today.
Cần phiên dịch thì hãy bấm vào cái phím interpretation.
Yeah, you're popping up in the English translation. 4 languages are being provided: Cape Verdean Creole, Spanish, Vietnamese, and Haitian Creole.
Chúng ta có một số tùy chọn.
So for you to get to these translation services, there is an icon at the bottom of your screen labeled interpretation, and it shows a globe.
Speaker, so I can listen to this meeting. Yeah, the speaker that mommy used when she go outside.
Excuse me, y'all folks. Can we have everyone muted just for a second so I can share the directions with everyone? Thank you. Once again, there's interpretation services available. If you click the globe icon at the bottom, you'll be able to choose the 4 languages.
Quý vị nhìn thấy bản cờ và địa cầu bên dưới.
Key, I'm just going to ask you to pause, Key, just for a moment so I can get through this one. You'll have to select your preferred language and then select the mute original audio option underneath the 4 languages so that you can only hear the language that you selected. All right, Petra, to the next page, please. All right, this evening we're going to go over introduction to the project team, talk about the schedule and process. We'll then go over the findings from the workshops that took place in the past month and talk about building programming. From then on, our team will talk about the site analysis and this preliminary site analysis as we start getting underway to work on a layout. From there, we will talk about next steps and options, next steps on what's going to be going on as we continue with the design process. And then we'll have time for Q&A and wherever folks will be able to ask any questions they have regarding the project. Please note also the link on the right there to project information on the right there, boston.gov/BCYF-Grove-Hall for more information. And this meeting will be recorded and posted on that website. All right, so this evening we have the projects team, City of Boston projects team. From Public Facilities, we have Carrie Griffin, who I believe is on the line. Carrie.
Thanks, Robinson, and thank you all for your time this evening. We're really excited about this project as a department and working with BCYF and the community. And we have a great team, and we've had some great turnout at the workshops that we've been performing with our architect, Util, who's doing an excellent job. And I look forward to the meeting tonight and answering any questions you may have.
Thank you, Carrie. Also part of the Public Facilities team is Evan Brickman, our Assistant Director of Design, Patrick Mulvey-Welsh, our Assistant Director of Construction, myself, Robertson Casser, serving as Senior Project Manager on this project for PFD, and Michael Susi, our Senior Review Architect. I'll turn it over for Boston Centers for Youth and Families, Commissioner Marta Rivera.
Good evening, everyone. Marta Rivera, BCYF Commissioner. Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to continuing to work with you. We have a few BCYF staff on the call. I'll just identify a couple. We have Sandy Holden, who is our communications manager, and our chief of staff, Annie Chin, and our team from the Grove Hall Senior Center that has been a constant in terms of engaging seniors and others. So again, thank you.
All right, we'll turn it to Util.
Hi, everybody. My name is Brett Benson. I'm a principal at Util. We're the architects working with the city on this new community center. We're so excited to be here tonight. Thank you for being with us. Joining me tonight are my colleagues, Petra Andrew, and Alessandro, and you're going to hear from all of us tonight as we go through the work that we've been doing so far to date.
Thank you, Brett. Also like to thank the Community Engagement Committee as listed: Paulette, Mike, Justice, Charles, Chris, Randy, Connie, Paulo, Ed, Marcus, Angie, excuse me, and Khalid. Also, I didn't want to forget our over at PFD, our communications manager, Bridget Nee, who was also here. And I'd like to turn the floor to any elected officials or representatives who might be on the call. I'd like to give them the floor to say hello and introduce themselves. I see no hands have gone up or mentions in the chat. All right, we can go to the next slide, please. And we'll
Great.
turn it over to UTL to talk project schedule.
Great, thank you, Robertson. So this graphic here represents our project schedule for the community center and the general timeframe that we will have for community input as it relates to that overall schedule. We're currently at the beginning of the kind of early design phases, which we started in October, and that those phases are approximately 9 months long. This phase piggybacks on the study for the community center site and program that was completed in 2022. And the 9 months of early design phase includes things like confirming the site conditions, confirming the activities to determine what kind of spaces we need, determining how the spaces fit on and interact with the site, and developing overall interior and exterior design and setting the sustainability goals. After the so that phase is also where the majority of the community input will occur, and where we'll figure out what the building program wants to be before we move into technical design, which includes things like, you know, detailed development of the building plans, detailed coordination with consultants to develop building systems such as lighting, structure, HVAC, etc., and also selection of materials. I'll go on, and after that we have construction phase, approximately 24 months before a move-in and opening of the project. I'll go on to the next slide to zoom in on the community input timeline. As I mentioned, we started design in October. This is our second community meeting, and excuse me. Very recently, in the past number of weeks, we held a series of community workshops to get community members' input on what kind of activities they would really like to see in the new community center that was held at the Frederick Middle School, Burke High School, Grove Hall Senior Center, and the Vine Street Community Center. Which brings us kind of to where we are today, where we're going to kind of summarize some of the things that we heard at the workshops. And in 2024, we would be planning to conduct follow-up community workshops with the same groups, but this time focused on building planning and design and less so on activities. We will also have additional public meetings in 2024 to discuss the project with the community as the design develops. And with that, I will turn it over back to Brett.
Great. Thanks, Petra. So just as Petra mentioned, we're really focused in this phase on gathering all of the information that we possibly can from the community about the types of activities that will happen in this new community center. Those activities are then going to be organized into the types of spaces that will hold those activities. So we've had a great round of input from the community to date. And generally, these are falling into 3 broad categories, very similar to what we found during the program study phase a couple of years ago. And they fall into the kind of community and education types of programs. So the community room, potentially community kitchen, classrooms, an after-school program, the senior center, and a teen center. And then there's a kind of arts category of spaces. So we've heard about performance type spaces, recording studios, an art room, a maker space, or a tech lab. And then lastly, the types of fitness and sports activities. So swimming pool, types of activities happening in a pool or a gym, flexible fitness spaces, which might include space for cardio and weight equipment. Next slide. We also heard we got a lot of feedback at our first community meeting a number of weeks ago. This is a summary of the comments that we received that were about the uses and activities, because that's really what we're focused on in these initial phases. We took note of all the other comments, and we'll be taking those into account as we develop the design further and have continued community meetings with everybody. But just to go through these major bullet points around uses and activities, there were questions about green or open space being incorporated into the building, a note to look at the flagship clubhouse that's in Nubian Square, a note about an indoor track. And as Petra will explain, we did hear some commentary about that in our workshops. Can a steam room be incorporated? Our lockers are needed, and will gender neutral changing spaces be provided? Things like job training or rec sports league programming, interest in STEM and financial literacy, interests in intergenerational activities. A lot of those are types of programs, and we want to make sure that we're accommodating those with the types of spaces that we're providing. Next.
Great, thank you, Brett. So as I mentioned earlier, as part of the community engagement for this project, we have held 4 community engagement workshops. And throughout those, we have met with over 100 community members and gotten really great feedback about what activities people would like to see in the new community center. And just to go through our goals for the workshops, the goals of the workshops were to understand and document the uses and activities that community members would like to have in the community center, get input from a variety of age groups, all the different kind of users that would be using this building, and then also establish relationships with community members to help advise us through the design. The structure of the workshops typically included 2 activities. The first activity included posting pictures or text describing desired activities onto boards with different space types like you see in the picture. This is an example where participants picked activities, you know, from ones we provided in kind of picture form, and they pasted them, ones that they were interested in. They also got to add activities that they could write in, things that we didn't think of. And it was really awesome to see everybody's ideas. For activity 2, at the Frederick, the Burke, and Vine Street, people assigned emojis to different activities, showing their level of interest in those activities. So it was another way to kind of gauge level of interest in different things people were thinking of. And for activity 2 at the senior center, we discussed which activities should be closest to each other and also closest to the senior center. So now I'll go through the activities that workshop participants included in the different space type categories. And the activities listed here are the ones that got the most excitement generally from participants through both how many times participants kind of posted a picture of it to kind of how many positive emojis the activities got. So at the Frederick Middle School, we got lots of great ideas. Students chose some of the activities we brought pictures of, and they also had a lot of new ideas, which you see in the blue Post-its. So I'll just go through them just so everybody hears what those were. At the Frederick, for the pool program, people were interested in swim classes. Water slide came up, hot tub, lifeguard classes, splash pad, and water aerobics were exciting to people. Gym and fitness program types, basketball, roller skating, soccer, dance, volleyball, boxing were some of the ideas. For the teen center, students were interested in a gaming area where they could play video games with friends. movie viewing room or area. Beauty, cosmetology came up a lot, somewhere where students could do that. Lounge area for relaxing or sleeping, teen nights, and vending machines seemed important to people. Arts and maker spaces, 3D printing, recording studio, video and photo editing, sewing, drawing, and pottery. For the meeting room and classrooms, cooking classes were exciting, place for tutoring and homework help, computer classes, and medical training were just to kind of name a few of the ones that came up the most often. For Burke High School workshops, we did the same activities that we did for the Frederick, and for that one, you'll see a lot of alignment in some of the activities, but also some new ones. For the pool, we had swim classes, lifeguard classes, water aerobics, splash pad, water basketball, and pool floaties. Gym and fitness, roller skating, basketball, indoor track, weightlifting, boxing, dance, badminton, yoga, and soccer. For the teen center, food, having the option to get some food, gaming room, homework help tutoring, lounge, free Wi-Fi was a big one, ping pong, and karaoke. Arts and maker spaces, recording studio, videography, photography, sewing, robotics, 3D printing, and jewelry making were at the top of the list. For meeting room and classrooms, hair and barber shop classes, so a little bit in line maybe with what some of the Frederick students were saying, nail technician classes, counseling and therapy, cooking classes, medical training, and also daycare came up. An outdoor space, seating, and potentially a park-like space were interesting to the students. And then, as I mentioned, we did a workshop at the Grove Hall Senior Center, which was amazing. We had great turnout, met a lot of wonderful people there. I'll go through the activities again. For pool, swim classes, both day and evening, water aerobics, seating at the pool deck, very important, locker and changing rooms, steam room, and sauna were at the top of the list. Gym and fitness, yoga, tai chi, indoor track, dance, cardio, weightlifting, and badminton. For the senior center itself, board games, a computer room or a place to kind of access computers, a movie screen, comfortable furniture, parking, private room for private conversations were big ones. For arts and maker spaces, sewing, video editing, photography, jewelry making, drawing, 3D printing, and then general arts and crafts classes. For meeting room and classrooms, the teaching kitchen was very popular, language classes, public speaking classes, movies and film, and adult education. And then for outdoor space, the main categories were gardening and walking. And then lastly, for Vine Street Community Center, for the pool area, again, swim classes, both adult and infant, for a range of age types, came up a lot, splash pad, swim team, and lifeguard classes. For gym and fitness, it was basketball, indoor track, dance, soccer, football, cardio, weightlifting, and volleyball. For the teen center, gaming consoles and gaming area, ping pong, performances in general, recording studio, and a job search program. For senior center, there were not too many focused comments on senior center, but one of them was senior book club. Arts and maker spaces, recording studio, sewing class, laser cutter, and painting. And then meeting room and classrooms, kids and adult cooking classes, and a gaming area. And then other comments were interest in community garden, good signage, programs for boys grades 6 to 12, basketball programming for all ages, and also evening and after school programming. So that's a lot. And with that, I will turn it over to Alessandro.
And let me
talk a little bit
step
more
in
about
before
program.
Alessandro starts, and just wanted to give a big thank you to Miss Sennett and Mr. Bishop and Ms. Hoda and Ms. Augustin over at the Burke and the Frederick for sharing their students with us, and all of the BCYF staff for helping organize the Senior Center and the Vine Street. It was great. We had over 100 people to participate in these workshops, and we got a lot of great feedback. And also wanted to give a shout out to our consultants, Consult Layla, who helped to organize that as well.
Thank you,
Sorry,
Brett.
Alessandro, to jump on your toes.
No, that's okay.
Thanks, Brett.
Thank you, Brett. Hi, everyone. So as Petra can outline for us, we've already started receiving tons of great ideas and feedback from the community on the types of activities you'd all like to see and participate in at the new center. So here in this diagram, we've laid out some of the main rooms we think would be useful for housing these activities. Some of these rooms will have more specific uses, like the locker rooms, and others will be more useful for a wide variety of activities. So for instance, you see the dashed lines on the teen room, senior room, and community room, because it's particularly important for those that these spaces will be flexible and hold many different activities for their users to enjoy. And based on all of your feedback, we've started to look at what the sizes of these rooms might be in order to fit the right kinds of activities and the right amounts of people. But that will continue to evolve based on your continued feedback and as the design develops. So to take a look at some of the rooms, for the community-based spaces, we've laid out, if you continue on the last slide, thanks, Petra. For the community-based spaces, we've laid out an after-school space, a teen room, a senior room, a community room, and community kitchen, and a flexible space. For education spaces, we've included a tech lab and makerspace, as well as an art room. For athletics, we have the gymnasium and walking track, the pool, fitness studios, and of course the locker rooms. We'll also need a variety of support spaces like the lobby, restrooms, offices, and other things that the staff will need. And then looking outdoors, we've heard that it would be great to have some kind of dedicated outdoor space as well as a public plaza at the entrance to the building. So it takes a lot of space to hold all of these different activities, and space on the site is limited, as we all know. So the intention for now is for the community center to be spread out across 2 floors. If we were to have a 3rd floor, you start to need more stairs and elevators. Some of the activities people want to participate in start to get really far away from each other. And of course, it also just costs a lot more to build an entire 3rd story to the building. So we feel that 2 stories strikes the right kind of balance between cost effectiveness and accessibility. But of course, we're always open to feedback on that. Based on what we've heard so far at the community workshops, we've started looking at which spaces we'll want to be on each floor and will want to be near to each other. So just as some examples, on the ground floor, we've heard that the senior room should probably be near the entrance and in close proximity to the community room and kitchen and the fitness studios. That way there can be a variety of activities going on in these spaces simultaneously, and they can be as flexible as possible in terms of size, and things like that. We've also heard that all the athletic spaces want to be on the ground floor. This is great because these spaces are very large and it's more difficult to elevate them. But also keeping them on the ground floor makes a lot of sense for people who might be coming to the center specifically to use just the gym or the pool. So we want to make their access as easy and straightforward as possible. The rest of the spaces have a little bit more flexibility in terms of where they're placed. So we're currently looking at having the after-school space, teen room, and flexible space on the 2nd floor, as well as the tech lab, makerspace, and art room, which those 3 share a lot of common uses, so they kind of want to be grouped together. But maybe something like the art room that the seniors might also want to be using frequently could be placed near the elevator, so there's still ease of access between the floors for those programs. And lastly, the dedicated open space that could potentially be on the ground floor or the 2nd floor as sort of a roof deck, depending on how the building gets laid out. And again, that's something we'd love to hear your feedback on. I think with that, I'll hand things back off to Brett and Andrew to talk through some site character and analysis.
Great. Thanks, Alessandro. So Andrew's going to walk through on the next few slides some very preliminary site analysis that we've been looking at. And we want to take all of this information about uses and activities and use that as a springboard, just as Alessandro was describing, into coming up with some building floor plans that fit onto the site. And part of that is going to be imagining where the front door of this building wants to be located. So we'll go through a couple of diagrams showing that.
Hello, everyone. Here's a site aerial to situate us here in the Grove Hall neighborhood. The project site is outlined in red. To the south of the site is the Geneva Ave. To the west is Normandy Street, and to the north is Oldfields Road. And I think in this slide, we wanted to just position the site next to and identify other significant buildings and programs in the area. So this is across the site on Geneva Ave. We have the BPL and the Grove Hall Senior Center. Here next to that is the Burke High School. This is to the west of the site, across Normandy Street, is the Mecca shopping center here that you're familiar with, and up Geneva Ave is Blue Hill Ave, which is a major corridor. And to the bottom of the page along Washington Street is the Boston Fire Department Engine 24. So I think we wanted to position a site relatively adjacent to these other larger building programs in the area. Next slide. This is focusing more from the top view, looking at the stretch of Geneva Ave between Blue Hill Ave and Columbia Road, which again are major corridors. We wanted to at least understand and document the change in character as you move up and down up and down Geneva between these two streets. So we can start over closer to Columbia Road here on the next slide, where you will see the marker on the road is relatively where we are. We see more typical residential townhome style architecture that are generally accessed straight off of Geneva. You understand here, on the bottom left, you can see what a sort of street view of that looks like, and you understand the scale, about 3 levels. Onto the next slide, where we're moving up towards Blue Hill Ave. We see a slight change in scale, where we see still multifamily residential, but we see more apartment building type of architecture in the image on the bottom left. And this is where we are next to the open green space here, which we understand is slated for development. One other thing to note is in these apartment buildings that they are primarily accessed off of Bishop Joe Smith Way. So they're, if anything, their attention, or they're mostly front that cross street. Moving up Geneva towards Blue Hill Ave. This is where we see a further jump in scale and a change in building use. So here we see more civic architecture. This is the Burke and the BPL Grove Hall Senior Center. To the left of Geneva and to the right, you see the auto body shop and the church there, which again, we also understand is slated for further development. But again, we do see the multi-level or rather multi-story civic architecture on the left, and on the left of Geneva and to the right, we see the single level or single story architecture. To the next slide, as we move up Geneva, this is, I guess, right at the corner of Geneva and Normandy, where to the left we see some of the public art that's in the area. We see a mural here to the left, and also as you go down Normandy along that retaining wall, we understand there's also there are further murals as you go down that road. But again, I think this is where the point along Geneva where we see the negotiation between the civic scale and the commercial scale as you begin to move up Geneva. In the image on the left, you can see the Mecca shopping center. Next slide. And this is where, as you approach Blue Hill Ave, we're fully in a commercial corridor. You can see the Ma Dixon Square that's right there, and this is where the region or the character of the road changes to more commercial.
Great, thanks Andrew for that walk down Geneva Avenue. So where we want to leave it tonight is, like I said, a kind of springboard into our next steps, which is to really think about how all of these programs and activities can fit on the site, and how they get arranged, and really starting to think about where the front door wants to be, as well as potentially an open space associated with that front door. So as Andrew was showing, and as many of you are familiar with the site, right on Geneva, we have the entrance to the Grove Hall Library. We have the entrance to the Grove Hall Senior Center. It's quite a tall building, so the Burke High School library and gym are actually on the upper floors overlooking this site. Our workshop with the Burke students was in the library overlooking this site, so we had a great connection between what was going to be happening on the future on the site and that workshop. But what we're starting to think is that the entrance should be located on Geneva Avenue. I think that makes a lot of sense in terms of all of the other activities that are happening on Geneva, a lot of relationship between, for example, the library and the community center for people to come and go as they want to. We want to hear your feedback. So we're here to listen. I think that's our last slide, and Robertson's going to kind of take it from here to talk about next steps, and then we'll take Q&A.
Thank you, Brett. So just going back to the project schedule in regards to next steps, we're still going forward with community input, gathering as much feedback as we can from the community. We've talked about our programming, or what the feedback we got regarding programming, and as speaking to what Brett said, we're going to determine how the spaces fit together and what adjacencies makes the most sense and work for not only the community but for BCYF and their team as well. And then after we've kind of come together in the sense of shape and size, we'll start working on the details and development of the building plans and drawings and specs, and developing the core systems of the building. Next slide. And as you can see, we'll still be definitely more meetings ahead. We'll definitely be reaching out and having more workshops where we'll be talking about the building planning and getting the look and feel, getting everyone's opinion or thoughts on the look and feel of what this community center will be. And there'll be future community meetings in 2024. So this is our last meeting of the year, trying to just touch base with the community before we continue on. Go to the next slide. So I'd like to open this up now to questions and comments. You can definitely do the as opposed to doing the chat. The chat is an option if you're not able to speak it out. But we definitely like to hear from the community and anyone in the meeting, and just get some thoughts and feedback on what we've seen today, or what we shared today, or any of the information that we put together. So I'd like to open the floor to questions right now. With that said, I'm looking for the raise the hand option there that we're seeing.
There is a comment in the chat from Mike Robertson too.
Thank you.
You want to address that?
Sure thing. Let me start with reading those while folks come together. First one is from Mike. It's regarding the Geneva Avenue and Normandy Street intersections. Mike says the entrance near there is that the issues with having the entrance near there is that there's ADA problems with that intersection with crosswalks, and would encourage users to use that intersection without marked crossings or crosswalks, excuse me. I'll turn it over to Brett, the util team, for thoughts on this.
Yeah, no, that's a great comment, Mike. Thank you for that. We will absolutely be looking at the potential for improving that intersection, possibly even adding a crosswalk there. I know that that's been identified in this meeting and other workshops as an area of concern for the community. We are still in the process of getting our survey completed so we can understand exactly what work that would entail, but we'll definitely be looking at that as part of this design.
Thank you, Brett. And for folks who are looking to raise their hand, if you scroll to the bottom along the taskbar below, there is the reaction, it looks like an emoji with a plus sign. If you click on that, and you'll see the option to raise hand. You click on the raise hand, that will notify us to click on you and to ask and give you the floor to speak. So definitely an option over the chat. With that, I'll just note that Mike added in there are sewer drains that impact potential sidewalk ramps. So something to consider as we continue exploring options regarding the entry point and design.
Robertson, I'll just add too that we'll work closely with, we have a partnership with Public Works, Boston Water and Sewer. When we start these projects, you know, we look to them and say, you know, we're doing this project. What do you need for upgrades, for crosswalks, for this area, this circle that we're building around? So we do work closely with our other city partners to try to correct additional work, you know, outside of the building.
Thank you, Carrie. Mike, I see you have your hand raised. Mike,
Sorry, I was on mute. Why don't you start with the programmatic slides and try to get feedback on the programmatic slides that kind of cover and get feedback from folks as to does that make sense in terms of some or do people have more additional comments to make? So kind of get people organized on how they can present their thoughts.
thank you, Mike. Petra, would you mind going back to the programming slides? Is there a particular one that you wanted to see, Mike?
No, I think it's just, you know, kind of once you just show some of them again, because it was early in the presentation, so kind of get people to say this makes sense. You have other ideas or
So in addition to what Mike is asking, please, folks, I encourage folks to raise hands. There are opportunities, there are feedback boxes at several locations, including the Grove Hall Senior Center, where you can fill out an index card, or you can please share those with folks who have not been able to attend today's meeting, where they can also give that input. We do check those boxes periodically to see what feedback we do get. While we have this graphic up, I'm going to jump back to the chat. There are a couple comments that are coming in from Michaela. Michaela notes says, I think a bike bus program would be great, especially from the Four Corners Geneva commuter rail station. Also, are there plans for a mother-father room for private feeding for babies? Turn some of these design questions over to Util again.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of the a private room for mothers or fathers to feed babies, we can absolutely look into that. Like I said, we're very early in our process, so we'll add that to the list of questions and potential areas to review.
Thank you, Brett. I'm going to jump up to hand raise, Erico Correa.
Yes. How you doing?
Good.
Yes, I'm a homeowner on 53 Oldfields Road. I own 53 Oldfields, and I'm really excited about this project here. I think it's something that's going to be great for the neighborhood. But as a homeowner and a person that lives here, I do have some concerns in terms of when we do build this building. Obviously, people are going to be driving in and trying to figure out where they're going to park. And parking is an issue in this area, especially this teen center is probably going to be used mainly in the evening when everybody else is coming home from work. So how are we going to deal with the situation with parking?
Thanks for your question, Erico. Something that we're exploring just to see how what can be done. As you mentioned, parking is very limited around the site, and trying to find the balance of providing parking and making room for the programming space. We really want to make sure that we're giving enough room for programming. So that's something that we're weighing back and forth and looking into, as trying to strike that right balance. But as you can see, there's been a lot of feedback in terms of what kind of programming is the community is looking to have, and a lot of options. So we're definitely taking a look at that and seeing what's best. Right now, parking is almost secondary to the programming. So once again, it's something that we're working on and trying to find us the best solution for.
Got it. Thank you. I really appreciate it. One last question. Earlier, gentleman, I think his name is Alex. I'm not sure, and I apologize if I'm saying his name wrong. Mentioned that looking on Geneva Ave, the two properties on the right-hand side, which is the church and the body shop, due for development. I just want to clarify that the body shop is not going through any type of any type of remodeling. It's going to stay as is. So the church has been approved to become 50 units, and then we have the teen center that's going to be another building with the body shop stuck in the middle.
Thank you for sharing that, Erica. We appreciate it.
Okay. No problem.
Just gonna jump back into the chat. There was a question from Jayana Thomas. Are there plans to make it wheelchair accessible? Director Carey definitely confirmed the building will be fully accessible. There will be an elevator, and it will be roll-in entry. So there's no. All right. Any other hands raised or any other questions, please? Please, we're looking forward to answering questions or addressing any concerns that anyone may have at this time. Well,
I have one. Is there any kind of office on the first floor? Because seeing the offices on the second floor, I'm just thinking of the staff trying to cover the front and running up and down. Is there some office space on the first level too?
Great question. Thank you for asking. We're looking at all options. I think this is a preliminary look, but if that's a concern, I know there will be a lobby front check-in desk with operational space on the first floor for staff. That's something that we could definitely look into in terms of how to identify where the appropriate location for offices will be. With that, I'm going to jump back into the chat section. There were a couple of questions or a couple more comments that popped up. Mike Kozu, excuse me, and will programming be geared to those with physical challenges like wheelchair-bound activities? I will turn
Mike,
that
I was
question.
gonna ask you to expand on that. Are you talking about like a zero entry for the pool? That type of, because the building will be fully accessible.
Why don't you, this is Mike, why don't you describe, I've been on some discussion, why don't you describe what are some of the possibilities? Like, explain what you mean by the access to the swimming pool. I think the Tobin does activities in their gym. What are some different things that can be done? Because we have, I think both the Burke and Frederick has, and the Carter School's at the Frederick right now, that has families in the neighborhood that have students that are wheelchair bound. So what are some of the possibilities?
I'd like to defer to BCYF regarding our
Right,
Yeah.
for programming, I would ask Mata to jump in here, because the building will be able to accommodate, whatever is necessary, but we wanna, that's more program operational.
Thanks, Carrie and Robertson. So as they said, it is going to be accessible, and the pool's going to have a zero entry, so that is to be able to get into the pool. It will also have the assisted device, but it's not the lift, right? So it'll be easier to access. Additionally, we are looking at having a significant amount of space in the gym for storage, so that we can have blanking on the name of the program.
Adaptive.
Thank you, Adaptive Sports, which is an organization that partners with the Tobin around sports for people who are wheelchair bound. And so it requires a significant amount of space because of the type of equipment they use. So that is something that we're trying to build in to the gymnasium. And as Robertson said earlier, when you are looking at things like parking and other accommodations, like, again, making space for for this equipment, where it's a balance, because then we're giving up space in other areas, but we are committed to making sure that we have the space to provide this type of programming.
Thank you, Marta, for that. We go back to the chat. I did see another question from Christina. Are you still taking feedback on the type of programs in the center? Christina, yes, we are. There are several avenues to provide that feedback. We mentioned the feedback cards. Also, if you go online there to the link that was provided earlier, and we can show that again. You can click there and there'll be an email that you can be able to provide additional feedback, which will be shared with the projects team. So definitely would like to get that information and share that with the team. So thank you. Scanning, anyone else have their hands up? I'll go through the participant list to see if there's any other hands raised. In the interim, I did see Mike, you wrote also for seniors who rely on walkers and wheelchairs. Just going back to just talking about accessibility, but this site will be completely ADA accessible. We are working with the Disabilities Commission. Regarding input, they did provide a checklist for what they would need for ADA accessibility, which has been shared with the project team. So all considerations are being made for accessibility. All right. So once again, looking for hands raised or just any comments or feedbacks. And while we're doing that, if there's any particular slide anyone would like to see again or like to have up on the screen for that can help jog some questions, we're more than happy to oblige. With that said, Mike posted another comment. Can there be multi-purpose rooms so we can have workshops on different topics? And the short answer is I believe that's what we'd like to accomplish, is create as much versatility throughout the space as possible so that all this program requests can be accommodated. As you can see from the programming list, there's the educational rooms and there's fitness studios, but even though they're given these titles, they have a lot of versatility in what they can be and what can be done in those spaces. So we just want to make sure that we're being as versatile as possible to be able to accommodate all the programming ideas that the community and BCYF would like to have there. Are there any questions, any other further questions, or anyone who would like to raise a hand and make a comment? We definitely would like to hear any thoughts that anyone's having. And once again, there will be opportunities again for further workshops. I know we did a lot of program gathering now, but we will be revisiting with the workshops regarding look and feel in the upcoming months during the design period. Patrick, could you go back to the last slide? What great question. Mike, thank you for the question. What was surprising to your team from the student was beyond what I imagined. I mean, we did envision this hearings, we heard about sewing, but the various movies and the trips and the plethora of activities that take place in that room. We are looking forward to creating a space that can accommodate what they do and what other visions that they have. But the seniors definitely shared a plethora of ideas and talked about what they use the current senior center space for. So it was great to hear the ideas that we did. Our consultants came with some great ideas and initial plans, but then we opened it up with the Post-its. And as you can see from the pictures, there were a lot of blue Post-its with ideas that we hadn't put on paper. So it was great to get additional feedback beyond what was brought to them. I'll ask you, Teal, what their thoughts were on that same question. But thank you for asking that question, Mike.
Yeah, I'll second what you said, Robertson. Working with the seniors, I was very much struck by not just the great ideas that we heard. We always framed our questions that everybody else is going to have much better ideas than we do. So we really try to encourage everybody to come up with the things we didn't think of. But I would say that the seniors especially were incredibly grateful for the great staff at BCYF in the senior center, and were just so enthusiastic about the programming. They had some great ideas about outdoor space. I think Mike Kozu, to your earlier question about flexible spaces, making sure that spaces can accommodate different activities happening all at once. And then working with the Burke students and the Frederick students, really just the wide range of activities that they were imagining happening in the community center. So everything from a salon to barber shop to boxing, just a really wide range. And it's just great to hear. And as I said earlier, we're trying to take all of those activities and think about the types of spaces, the kind of containers that can hold those activities. And that's really where we are in this step. So it's just been fantastic to hear. And, we want to get all of the feedback that we're getting tonight and more so that we can make sure we're providing the right amount of spaces and the right flexibility to them so we can have those programs and activities work out in the new community center.
Yeah, and one I just want to add was I remember being at the pilot middle school, and there were a couple students who wanted adult classes, places for their parents to go and learn to speak English, which was pretty nice to hear them thinking just beyond what they could do for teens, but what can they do for their family members as well. That was really nice to see the consideration that these students were putting in for their families. And I just follow it from Mike. And were you able to review the Burke presentations and incorporate that into the feedback? No, we did actually meet with the professor. She was part of the workshop that we had. The professor that had shared the Burke presentations. I'll let you two speak to what they were able to pull from those presentations.
Yeah, so we do have the presentations. We've been taking those to heart. Unfortunately, the video, there was a problem where the video wasn't available, so we didn't get the full effect from them. I think there was a technical problem that happened over at the Burke, but the presentations have been great, and they kind of really reinforced what we heard directly from the students during the workshop as well. I want to go back to one other thing about some of the things we heard at the Vine Street Community Center pop-up event that we had on Saturday, where there were a lot of parents and caregivers who were bringing kids to different classes. And there was a lot of excitement about this site in particular and being close to the Mecca and all of the shopping options there and just being super convenient to bring your kids for a class and then walk across the street and do some shopping at the grocery store or at CVS or at some of the small businesses along Blue Hill Avenue. So that was just great reinforcement about this site being a great site for a community center, as well as being across the street from the library.
Thank you, Brett. And we got a set note. The two of us have spoken, Brett. I want to reach out to some other members of the committee that did appear at these workshops. Petra and Bridget, if you have any thoughts that you'd like to share in terms of what your tables or your groups discuss with you.
I can speak about the creativity and the open-mindedness of the students. They had ideas from, like you mentioned, Brett, hair salons to trampolines to badminton. They were extremely vocal about what they wanted. And it was great to actually speak to those who are using this center. I'll echo that as well, Robertson. The way they thought about their families with different classes was extremely powerful, but it definitely is going to guide our decision making.
Thank you, Bridget. Any other questions or hands raised as I scan, or any other feedback that wants to be added into the chat so that we can share it with everyone on the call? We are wrapping it up. It's about to be 7, so we can also call it a day at this point, but I want to make sure that anybody who hasn't spoken has had a chance to speak before we do so. Well, it is exactly 7, so I think we'll conclude the meeting today at this point. Just a reminder that there's always opportunities to provide feedback. As you can see on the screen, There is a link to a website that will talk more about this process. The email address to send comments can be pulled if you visit that website. Thank you very much for your time this evening, everyone, and we look forward to meeting again and discussing further development down the line. Everyone have a good night.